Welcome back to the Georgia Show. We are glad to be back here on this Wednesday night, and we've got a hell of a show for you coming up. How you doing, Bill? Good?
I am well. Thank you for asking, Todd. It's great to be here, and it's good to have you back in the country.
Yeah, thank you. And I want to talk about that. CDM has been early on stories. Georgia Record is one of our properties, but we were early on the vaccines. We were early on the machines. We were very early on Ukraine. We were early on Poland. And guess what? We were early on the Armenian story. We decided a few months ago, that we're going to talk about persecution of Christians. Everybody is just kind of tiptoeing around the subject, but we're going to really actually talk about it. Nobody else is doing it. We're going to do it. So we took a team to Armenia, which is the first Christian country, and we started telling the story of what's going on over there and how these people are still being abused after the 2+ million were killed in the Armenian genocide. They recently just lost a lot of land to Muslim Azerbaijan. There's a lot going on there. And lo and behold, I get a call from someone close to President Trump's administration. You could say has the ear of the White House, and they were asking a lot of questions. And then boom, Friday, there's a peace deal in the White House between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Both leaders are coming. So not only are we early on stories, but we have an impact. I'm not saying that was all us, but we definitely were out there talking about it, and a lot of people saw. So, and I think you have a similar situation for you. You're going to talk about in a minute, Bill, right? As far as being in front of stories.
We seem to be aimed at the right things. And you and I have talked about this in the past. After, I guess, going on now the third year of looking at stories appropriate for the Georgia Record and for CDM, we seem to have a sense of what is important. I mean, there's a million stories. There's a million stories in the Naked City, but we seem to be able to pick the ones that are perhaps the most important at the moment. So that's great.
Yeah, and there's a lot. I mean, we are up working 24/7. Our team is constantly on the ball, but we work to maintain that stamina with health, which we'll talk about. But we try to curate the information that you need to know. I say on our show, The Skiff, we can't talk about everything, but we're going to tell you what you need to know. Not what you want to hear, but what you need to know to be the smartest in the room. So I'm going to play a quick video. This is at the Etchmiadzin, which is the first Christian cathedral ever. It is a place where the spear that tore Christ's body on the cross is located and was stored for 10,000 years. I actually saw it. At least they say it is. The Bartholomew, one of the disciples, came up and brought it to this monastery in Etchmiadzin for the Armenian Apostolic Church. So I'm going to play this just to give you a flavor of what we had what we saw in Armenia. So we're here at the first Christian cathedral in Etchmiadzin in Armenia, outside of the capital of Yerevan. This is the first Christian cathedral ever built in 301 AD, and it was built by the disciples. I believe Bartholomew and St. Thomas were here, and I believe they're buried here. I have to confirm that, but also the spear that pierced Jesus is here in the museum that we are going to try to see as well. So this is, as I said, the first Christian cathedral ever built. It survived the Persian invasion and survived the Soviet Union, but it's still standing today. So thank you. Just wanted to show you a little bit of what we saw. And we also went to Istanbul to the Hagia Sophia, which is the Byzantine Empire's cathedral, the largest indoor cathedral space in the world. It's now a mosque. Erdogan is moving Turkey into the Ottoman Empire. It was conquered by the Ottoman Empire in 1453, but stood alone for 1,200 years. But incredibly beautiful structure. And Bill, I had just a feeling of that the Turks had turned this into kind of a den of thieves, kind of just a bunch of used car salesmen out trying to rip you off everywhere around this incredibly beautiful historic building. That was saddening to me. And somebody actually lit it on fire yesterday inside on the mosque. I saw a tourist came in and said they had turned everything inside into a mosque, and someone lit it on fire. We're not condoning that, but I can understand the frustration that people see when they go there. We're going to continue this discussion on Christian persecution, and we'll likely be going to Beirut with some people or contacts that we've met on this trip that wanted us to go there to again talk about Christian persecution in the Middle East. So stay tuned for that. But back to you, Bill.
There's just to weigh in on one thing that it's sort of adjunct to what you just covered. If folks, we've called out a number of times. If folks remember the Olympics last year, there were certain ceremonies, certain visuals and graphics and things that were held at the Olympics that appeared to be mocking Christianity. And a lot of people pushed back on those at the time. But very interestingly, there was one particular one where they appeared to be mocking Last Supper. The woman, fairly weighty woman who was at the center of that, later posted something after people were saying, oh, no, that wasn't it. That's just coincidence. It just happened to look similar. She actually showed the comparison herself on one of her posts. I tried to find it just now, and I will find it by the time we do more on this, but it's up on Twitter, and you can actually see that people that were participating in these themselves acknowledge that these were indeed meant apparently to mock, to make fun of things that they don't like. And apparently they don't like Christianity. So it is a thing and it cannot be ignored. So
you're completely right. I want to say hello to everybody in the chat. Thanks for the conversation. We really appreciate it. All the engagement for the Georgia Record and GeorgiaRecord.com. We're brought to you by the Georgia Record and CDM.press. Put us in your daily scan. Put the Georgia Record in your scan. We need the traffic. We're growing, but we want to keep growing this network. And we're on podcast. So you can find the Georgia Show on podcast anytime and listen to it in the car, double speed if you want to get to it in half the time. And also check out whatfinger.com. It's one of our great aggregator sites if you're looking for something besides CDM. And also sign up for our no ad subscription that Bill's got up there. Top right corner of the Georgia Record or any CDM site, subscribe with no ads. You get access to all of our content like you just saw in HB Osden in Armenia. A lot of video content. But the print content has no ads. You don't get any pop-ups on your phone, and people love it. So thank you for that, Bill. I'm going to turn it over to you, my friend.
Okay. So the theme for tonight is we'll start with politicians are actors. And we mean several things by that. One is they play a role, and that role can change from time to time, and you'll actually see it. We saw an example literally just in the last 24 hours. A lot of people have been asking questions regarding Marjorie Taylor Greene and some statements that she made that came out through the Daily Mail. Let's take a look. So, Marjorie Taylor Greene has been one of the, I'll call it most vocal, beginning back in 2020 and 2021, in support of Trump, in support of looking into the rigged election, looking into the strange choices and things that the Biden administration was doing, kept lobbying to, impeach Pelosi and other things. And all of a sudden, in the last maybe 2 years, there's been some choices that she's made that looked different to many. The first of which was seemingly backing Kevin McCarthy and getting a chummy relationship with Mr. McCarthy in the midst of a speaker change, so the speaker selection. Next was voting for the House to release the debt ceiling. And at the time, she got a lot of pushback, in my opinion, from even her own district here in Georgia, the 14th district, where she appeared shortly thereafter, pushed back pretty diligently and said, what is this really about? Oh, well, we're going to have, according to Marjorie at the time, we're going to have 12 appropriations bills, so we will have a better sense of how things are being spent going forward. Notably, those 12 appropriations bills never happened. And subsequent to that, she was removed from the Freedom Caucus, one of the groups in Congress that really pushes and tries to make sure that we're acting, that the Republicans are acting like Republicans, and really pushing for upholding the Bill of Rights and everything else that Americans and America First folks and MAGA folks have come to count on. Now comes this latest, which is the Daily Mail showing that in a dialogue with them, she now has said, and you can see it here on the page, the course that it's on, talking about the Republican Party, I don't want to have anything to do with it. How could that be after this stage? How many different choices do we have? Now, most troubling locally here in Georgia is that Marjorie Taylor Greene, back in the April-May timeframe, endorsed Josh McCoon. Josh McCoon, the then and now renewed chairman of the Georgia Republican Party. But many people that attended the state convention saw just unbelievable aberrations in the mechanisms and process with which the convention was held. There was a chairman for the convention picked with really no input from the floor. That's not supposed to happen. They adopted rules without any ability for the folks to challenge the rules. Others would claim, oh, no, they got the chance. No, they really didn't. And the folks that went there know that they didn't. They were kept from the microphone so that folks that wanted to make statements or question things or make motions, in many cases, were kept from making those statements. In some cases, because the chairman refused to acknowledge them. In other cases, they simply couldn't get to the mic to make the statement and could not be heard. All of this after Marjorie Taylor Greene backs Josh McCoon. Now comes all the mess with First Liberty and the questions regarding how in the heck did a $140 million Ponzi scheme get orchestrated, certainly since 2021, according to the receiver and the SEC, and potentially all the way back to 2014. How did this happen, and why are so many people tied in with First Liberty, also tied in with the Georgia GOP? Brant Frost, the fourth, members of his family have worked for First Liberty. They've acknowledged that they've worked for First Liberty, who held various positions. They've given apparently contributions to what I believe has now been documented to be candidates in and organizations in as many as 38 states. Are the victims strewn across those 38 states as well? Well, we don't know until they finish their investigation. Right now, this is at a civil action stage being run by a receiver appointed by the court, and they're delving into the facts behind First Liberty. But as we get deeper into it, there seems to be these odd ties between First Liberty and the Georgia GOP. And notably, even today, folks that have been working with First Liberty that may be tied in with these very concerning charges are still active and still holding posts. In some cases in the state committee, in other cases at district committee level, and at local county GOP level. McCoon issued a statement about a week ago saying that Brant Frost, the fifth, had been removed from the state committee, but no statement about Katie Frost, his sister, or Krista Frost, his mother, both of whom hold other positions, both in the state committee and in district and local positions within the Georgia GOP. Just kind of ignored those people. How could that be? And how could it be in the face of what we've now learned has resulted in hundreds of victims, some of whom it is said may have lost almost their entire, if not their entire life savings by investing it in First Liberty. How could this all be tied together? We don't know, but we are hanging on to this, and we will continue to report the facts as they come out. But underneath it all, think back. Look at all the people that backed Josh McCoon, and why would they do that, and why would they stand behind it, and why now do they seem so silent about First Liberty and those now visible ties between members of the GOP and First Liberty and folks that they may have endorsed? Troubling.
So tell me if I'm right. Katie Frost is still the chairman of the Financial Oversight Committee for the GOP in Georgia. Am I correct?
As far as we can tell, that's correct. Yes.
Wow.
How does that happen? It would seem to be the last person you would pick to be involved in anything financial.
We make
But
Bernie Madoff the chairman of the treasurer of the Georgia
yeah,
GOP.
and Epstein is going to run the summer camp for the GOP for kids next summer.
Jeez. Oh man.
So you can't ignore these things. So now you can say, why would these people be silent? Oh, because they're acting. I guess they haven't got the latest script yet. So we don't know. We're gonna continue to be on that.
That's a good point. They're just being told what to do, so they don't really know, or they haven't been told to remove yourself from here or do this or do
Or
that.
maybe there isn't a way to really remove themselves, and so better to be silent and hope people forget. We're not going to let them forget
No,
here
we're
in
not.
Georgia, certainly.
No, they should know that by now.
So one of the other things that we reported just in the last 24 hours, and I wanted to call attention to it, is an article we put up on the Georgia Record that talks about the strange fight, if you will, going on between MAGA, America First, folks and initiatives underneath Trump, and Kemp and his seeming initiatives here in Georgia. And it appears to be brewing itself into some would call it a civil war, but it is definitely a fight. What many people don't yet know fully is that there was a set of discussions between the Trump camp, the Trump team, Brian Kemp and his team, and Brian Kemp himself, from what I understand. And there was an agreement to work collectively to pick an appropriate senatorial candidate for Georgia to go up against and defeat John Ossoff, whose Senate seat will be coming up for election or re-election in 26. Even despite that agreement, apparently, Kemp went off and formed a decision to not back the existing folks that had put their name in, including Mike Collins, who it seems would be probably one of the first that the Trump camp would think of. Instead, he backs Derek Dooley, a coach and a son of Vince Dooley, who has almost no background in politics. We are told he has not even registered as a Republican, may not have registered to vote, doesn't appear to have voted in any of the last elections, didn't vote for Trump in 2016, didn't vote for Trump in 2020, didn't vote for Trump in this last election, as far as we can tell. And now talk comes, is he even really a Republican? This is Derek Dooley we're talking about. How does that fit? And why would a Republican governor who leads the Republican governors group and was in the room when Trump called on them to, fix election processes in all of their states? Kemp was sitting in the front row when Trump made that call for election reformations. Why would he pick somebody that clearly doesn't appear to have ever supported Trump? How does this play out? Well, within this article, you'll find some interesting facts. One, it underscores that this seems to be Kemp pushing for his own purposes Derek Dooley. Why? Maybe it's about control. Maybe it's about other benefits that he may accrue from Derek Dooley's campaign. You'll recall that back in the Trump campaign, we heard about Susie Wiles and Chris LaCivita getting monetary benefits from ad placements and other investments in Trump's campaign. Some called them wrong for doing so. Now it appears that Kemp may have people positioned, there may be members of his family even positioned to benefit financially from the fundraising activities surrounding Derek Dooley. That's being reported by folks that we believe are in a position to get valid data. And as we learn more about that, we probably will be able to present more, but we have a very solid contributor that has come forward with data that suggests this. We recommend people take a minute, go to georgiarecord.com and read this article. You'll learn more and be positioned to understand potentially more about what's going on in Georgia with this strange race. Very critical that John Ossoff get beaten during this next senatorial election. And we're wondering, is this some sort of strange head fake where Brian Kemp is setting it up so that it's very difficult to impossible to get Ossoff beaten? Why would he do that? A
Well,
Republican
I
governor.
think it's obvious, Bill. This is just another. You mentioned actors. This is another actor. He has no experience. He's not political. Nobody even knows who he is. Why would you run him for Senate? It's because he can be controlled. It's a matrix candidate, just like Zelensky, just like Starmer, just like Biden. All of them. Just a lower level Biden. I see that as. What do you?
Well, it could be. He also duly appears to be trying to position himself as an outsider like Trump. But the problem is there's really no comparison. Yes, he's an outsider in that he's never been involved and never really made any comments, never had input. Trump had input into the political process for well over a decade, maybe 2 decades. He would have statements often about the things happening in New York, in America, and made his views known. Derek Dooley has never made his views known, as far as I can see, and people are questioning that. And it seems to be this sort of ham-handed, oh, but I'm an outsider, and he appears to be trying to compare himself to a Trump-like character. That's not going to work. People are America First folks and real MAGA folks are seeing this, and they're like, who? What? No.
Yeah, it's just bizarre. But I mean, my take would just be he's another actor.
Yeah, I think that's kind of why we started with that theme, because that's what these people seem to do. They seem to, okay, what's my role going to be? How am I going to portray myself? Okay, lights, camera, action. Here we go.
Can you imagine the operations center they must have? I had a former Delta Force guy call me and say, we need to find the operations center where they're running all this from. And can you imagine they have to direct all these actors and playwrights, and they have to keep it all going, keep the lies going. It must be pretty intense.
It must be. And I suspect that depending on what level you ascend to in looking at this, you may find that there's people or things involved in running some of this you might not ever believe. I've read articles that suggest that the people behind some of this stuff, especially at the national level, may not be even people we have ever heard of or involved in things in a visible way. So we wouldn't even know who they were. It's very odd. Okay, so let's continue on a bit with Georgia. So here comes now Chris Carr talking about gun control and how Savannah's attempt at putting in place new gun restraints is inappropriate, and he's going to fight that. Well, so here's one of our good reminders. Recall that last year, earlier this year, during the legislative session, a law was proposed that would prevent Savannah and other municipalities and counties and lower organizations. It would prevent them from putting such rules in place and provide very substantial fines for even trying to do so. I think at one point they were trying for a $50,000 fine for trying to infringe on gun rights. And that was defeated. It was defeated and failed to pass in our own legislature here in Georgia. Yet we're supposed to be Republican controlled. Now steps in Chris Carr to say, oh, I'll take care of this. At the time that legislation was being proposed, he was silent. So it was very interesting. The Freedom Caucus called this out, as they should, and talk about the fact that, when real gun ordinances were being fought against, where was Carr? Why wasn't he stepping forward and trying to prevent this? He was silent. Again, that was the role apparently at that time. And right there in that second main paragraph, you can see, where was Chris Carr? Silent, missing in action. Mm-hmm. We cannot forget this as we consider the election runs that these people are making. Don't let them fool you into, oh, I'm a different person than I was when I had the chance to step in and do that before.
Didn't he highlight his deceptive nature at CPAC? Something very similar, if I remember correct.
He did. As a matter of fact, you and I, as I recall, were in the audience at CPAC, and he took the stage and seemed to portray himself as a child trafficking aficionado, as if everything that had happened with regard to child trafficking in Georgia had been at his behest. However, if you recall, when Colton Moore announced that human trafficking was going on in Hartsfield Airport, visibly on video, Chris
Yeah.
Carr again was, as the Freedom Caucus states right here, where was Chris Carr? Silent, missing in action. He was missing in action back then too, as was the remainder of the legislature. Nobody said a word. They let Colton Moore speak on the Senate floor about what he had seen. They saw the videos. We put the videos up for many days, and yet nobody wanted to talk about it a whit, including Governor Brian Kemp.
Yeah.
Why? So, again, playing roles.
Yes.
All right.
Given their lines to read.
All right. One more step here. So we thought we might be looking at a win in Fulton. The Fulton Superior Court held that a writ of mandamus, that within that the Fulton Commission had to accept the nominations for election board that had been presented by the Fulton County GOP underneath Stephanie Andres. Well, those meetings were held today, and guess what? They failed to assign Julie Adams and Jason Frazier to the election board as had been nominated. And in fact, the motion to do so, the initiative to do so, was tabled by Bridget Thorne, I am told, in favor of letting the judicial process play out. So once again, we can't count on the county commissions to do what they are supposed to do. So again, the initiative gets tabled, and we still sit here today after even what the Fulton Superior Court had ruled. We sit here without these people assigned to the election board in Fulton County.
Wow. Wow.
You really, you cannot make this up.
They
So even though we look,
they can't allow anybody to see under the hood, man.
That's right. Especially Jason Frazier, who is an expert at this after working on this, along with other parties, but certainly with his own knowledge and expertise for going on now 5 years. They can't let him into this role because he, as much as anybody else, and maybe more, would be able to spot things that they don't want spotted, I suspect, my opinion.
Yes, of course.
The other thing that gets called out, Gabriel Sterling seems to be trying to take a victory lap, saying Georgia is recognized again as a leader in voter list maintenance. I'm sorry, but bullshit.
No kidding.
Kevin Moncla, again, a very astute, well-versed expert in election integrity, election processes, published this just a number of hours ago, calling out that Georgia has more citizens registered than we have voting age citizens.
Yeah.
How could that be? I won't go through each one of these columns. Basically, it says, well, some are registered and active, some are registered and inactive. But the very fact that we have more reported registrations, 8,234,000, and we only have 7,917,000 citizens of voting age within Georgia. We've got 300,000 extra people sitting on the registrations, and yet we have Gabriel Sterling saying, oh, we're a leader in voter list maintenance, right in line with what Raffensperger himself has claimed on national television, saying that we have the cleanest voter rolls in the country. Once again, full of crap.
Okay, let me do my John Solomon imitation.
Please. There you go. Thank you, John. I actually have been looking for a John Solomon bobblehead to put in the back of my car for that. Sorry, John.
Oh my gosh, too funny.
So, again, people will claim this, and if you weren't well informed, you might read what Gabriel Sterling posts here. Oh gosh, we're the leader in voter list maintenance. Isn't that great for Georgia?
Yeah.
It's not true. It's not true. And you can see it's not true in the data. Thankfully, the folks like Kevin Moncla, Jason Frazier, Julie Allen, and many, many others across Georgia are calling these things out as folks post them, and we're not letting them get away with the lies. We simply won't allow it. So kudos to all of those folks and the many, many more all across Georgia that are calling these things out. Let's take a break before we move to the next section, because we're going to go to more national news when we do.
Yeah, I'm just going to do just a personal break here. So this is a silver round. If you have cash, if you have assets that are in the fiat currencies, you may want to consider putting some of it into something like this. One, you can barter with it if the grid goes down, and two, silver is just on a rocket ship ride right now. May break $40. I'm not sure where it is. Did it break $40, Bill? You're a metals guy.
Earlier today, it was in the 38 to 39 range, so I haven't seen it go over 40 yet. No, but hopefully soon.
We've been screaming about precious metals for some time. You don't have to put this in your cash assets. You can put them inside your IRA. You can buy precious metals inside with an IRA wrapper. The way to do that is to go to cdmmetals.com and talk to Advisor Metals. We have a form there. You can fill it out, and they will contact you. And we have had such great response from the Advisor Metals guys. And just, they're not salesmen. You know, I remember once when I was in flight school, actually, I had a call from a silver option salesman. Hey, just put $10,000. Silver is going to go up $5, and who wears the pants in the family? How much money do you have? Put all your money into silver options right now. That's not what you're going to get. You're going to get just a discussion of how best to help you. So go to cdmmetals.com. Take a look at precious metals. I think you'll be happy about that. The other thing is mypillow.com. If you go to mypillow.com and use promo code CDM, just spend some time on the site. Mike has 600 plus products. You got kids going back to college. You got kids that graduated from college or getting their first flat, their first job. You have high school starting up. Kids need pajamas. You need slippers, gifts for Christmas. Don't go to the big box retailers. Spend your money with Mike, because you just don't help Mike, you help us. Free media, and he's a very good sponsor. Use promo code CDM. So go to mypillow.com. He's got 600 products. Spend some time, figure out what he's got, and enjoy. And the products are fantastic. People laugh at me because I've had this pair of slippers from Mike for so long. I love them. That I've worn holes in them. I've got duct tape on them to keep them together. But I love them. I have to get a new pair, I guess. But he's out of stock on the slippers, so I got to wait till he gets more. Anyway, back to you, Bill.
Okay. Well, we're all over the map. We're going slippers now. Very good. All right, so let's talk about some things going on at the national level. We've seen very unusual feedback regarding Epstein and the Epstein first the client list. Then we see Pam Bondi issuing what appears to be something to do with the client list. That turns out to be incorrect. And then we hear, oh, well, there really isn't an Epstein client list. And now we find that the House Oversight Committee, led by James Comer, has dropped a list of subpoenas for depositions in the Epstein case. 2 former officials. And it's very interesting. These former officials, you'll notice some common names that overlap with the discoveries that Tulsi Gabbard has brought out regarding the Russiagate and the Russiagate hoax against Trump. So this shows you the dates that these folks are being subpoenaed to appear. First up is Bill Barr on August 18th, and the rest you can see here. What will be found? Well, we don't know yet, but we don't think that they're calling these folks for a subpoena for just no purpose at all. There's something here, and we're going to keep our eyes on it. We recommend folks at home do as well. Moving on, there's something even more interesting. Let's go here, and let me say what happened, and then we're going to talk about a correlation again to something we've covered just this week. RFK has canceled 22 mRNA vaccine contracts, meaning there was $500 million being spent or allocated to Big Pharma to support the production or development of an additional 22 mRNA vaccines using, in part, government money. Those have been canceled. And he canceled these, and he warned that the shots that have already been produced because of COVID may have, in fact, prolonged the pandemic by driving dangerous mutations. Now, this is particularly fascinating because just this week, earlier in the week, on Monday evening, we aired a special regarding a study that has just come out in the last now 2 weeks that shows that thousands of gene expressions may be impacted following application of these mRNA-based COVID vaccines. What is a gene expression? It's the way that the genes in your cells and my cells work in our bodies. If those expressions do not function properly, they can cause many problems. We won't go into all of that at the moment. I would encourage folks to go back. You'll find it on the front page of the Georgia Record and be able to look at that video again in its entirety and be able to understand this. But we're talking about the potential to create hundreds, maybe thousands of various issues, both adverse effects in terms of conditions, but in some cases, even carcinogenic effects. Turbo cancers, as called out by Dr. Catanzaro, who was the subject of that interview. So we found it fascinating that we aired that and heard about it in these last 2 weeks, and now comes word that RFK has canceled these contracts. I'd like to bring up a video where he describes what's been done because we think it's so important and, very frankly, so timely. We need people to understand this because it may color and help them make appropriate decisions going forward. Here's RFK.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr. here, your HHS secretary. At HHS, we have a division called the Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority, or BARDA. BARDA drives some of our most advanced scientific research. It funds developments of vaccines, drugs, diagnostics, and other tools to fight emerging diseases and national health threats. Over the past few weeks, BARDA reviewed 22 mRNA vaccine development investments and began canceling them. Let me explain why. Most of these shots are for flu or COVID, but as the pandemic showed us, mRNA vaccines don't perform well against viruses that infect the upper respiratory tract. Here's the problem. mRNA only codes for a small part of the viral proteins, usually a single antigen. One mutation and the vaccine becomes ineffective. This dynamic drives a phenomenon called antigenic shift, meaning that the vaccine paradoxically encourages new mutations and can actually prolong pandemics as the virus constantly mutates to escape the protective effects of the vaccine. Millions of people, maybe even you or someone you know, caught the Omicron variant despite being vaccinated. That's because a single mutation can make mRNA vaccines ineffective. The same risk applies to flu. After reviewing the science and consulting top experts at NIH and FDA, HHS has determined that mRNA technology poses more risks than benefits for these respiratory viruses. That's why, after extensive review, BARDA has begun the process of terminating these 22 contracts totaling just under $500 million. To replace the troubled mRNA programs, we're prioritizing the development of safer, broader vaccine strategies, like whole virus vaccines and novel platforms that don't collapse when viruses mutate. Let me be absolutely clear. HHS supports safe, effective vaccines for every American who wants them. That's why we're moving beyond the limitations of mRNA for respiratory viruses and investing in better solutions. Thank you.
Produced by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
Okay, so we heard RFK say specifically that there's evidence now that, in fact, the vaccines for COVID may not have done the job that they were supposed to do. and may in fact have extended or prolonged the pandemic by inviting and supporting mutations like the Omicron variant and other things. We've talked in the past about the media working against the American people in hiding, in shielding, and in manipulating the truth to get across a different narrative. And many people think that that's something we've reported. We've shown them, we've brought up many times the Mockingbird media, the wall of videos from across the country, all saying the same exact thing, but trying to drive the public's thinking. Watch what we show next. And this set of videos will show that they are actually still in process doing this, trying to recast what the COVID vaccines did and didn't do. You're going to see 4 different examples of television stations, news organizations reporting that the COVID vaccines did what they were supposed to do. This in spite of what RFK just told you.
New at 7, the U.S. Health Department says it plans to cancel contracts and cut funding for some vaccines being developed to fight respiratory viruses, including COVID-19. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. now says $500 million worth of vaccine development projects will be halted. The 22 projects are led by major drug makers like Pfizer and Moderna. The targeted vaccines are credited with slowing the 2020 coronavirus pandemic. Kennedy says he wants the department to invest in, quote, better solutions, but provided no details on what those better solutions might be.
The Department of Health and Human Services plans to cancel contracts and pull funding for some vaccines being developed to fight viruses like COVID-19 and the flu. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. announced that $500 million, I should say, worth of vaccine development projects using mRNA technology will be halted. The 22 projects are led by major pharmaceutical companies like Pfizer and Moderna. And these mRNA or mRNA vaccines are credited with slowing the 2020 coronavirus pandemic. Kennedy wants the department to invest in better solutions, but he provided no details on what those better solutions might be.
Department of Health and Human Services is pulling $500 million worth of vaccine development funding. Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said the 22 projects being halted all use mRNA technology. That's the type of vaccine credited with slowing the COVID-19 pandemic. Kennedy said he wants the department to start investing in better solutions.
The Department of Health and Human Services will cancel contracts and pull funding for some vaccines that are being developed to fight viruses like COVID-19 and the flu. According to AP News, this will impact 22 projects led by pharmaceutical companies like Pfizer and Moderna. While mRNA vaccines are credited with slowing the 2020 pandemic, Kennedy said he wants the department.
Did you hear that? All 4 times. Credited with slowing the 2020 pandemic.
Yeah, got that in. Yeah.
Even though the same exact line, even though that's counter to exactly what RFK said. They even use personalities to try to respin the facts, even when we've got folks like RFK online with them. Watch this from Cuomo as he attempts to respin the notion of the causes and the things that have contributed to autism, according to RFK's research and findings.
Answer is, well, Bobby, the reason we get a lot more now is because everything gets a diagnosis these days. Every kid has at least 2 diagnoses for what we used to just call behavior. So now they're putting all these kids on the autism spectrum because that is kind of like the fashion of the moment. That's the answer to why we're seeing more. Do you accept that?
No, that is nonsense. It is an absurd, industry-driven canard. There's been study after study after study in high gravitas journals by the best research organizations and institutions and universities around this country that shows that the autism epidemic is real. And Chris, it's also just common sense. If it was just a matter of better diagnosis or better recognition, you would see it in older people. You don't. The epidemic is taking place in a specific generation, and it's kids who were born after 1989. That's where you see it. You don't see, it's not, you don't see autism. 1 in every 31 people my age. I have never seen somebody my age, 71 years old, with full-blown autism. That means profound autism. That means nonverbal, non-toilet trained, head banging, stimming, all the stereotypical features of the disease. You don't see that. And these are not people who are locked in some institution somewhere. There are no places for people like that.
Right.
And
Okay, so I want to make sure that folks get what they just heard. Chris Cuomo attempted to respin the observation of autism across a number of kids and a growing notion, a growing awareness of this as nothing more than, well, we're just measuring it better. There's multiple diagnoses and everybody's seeing it more. And RFK said, no, that's nonsense. If that were true, you would see that exhibited by folks in the population that were older, that had autism that they'd acquired many years ago. Here's the facts. Here is the incidence of autism going back to the early 1970s, I believe, on this chart. And at that time, in the beginning of this chart on the left, you can see that there was an incidence of approximately, they believe, 1 in 10,000 children would exhibit symptoms of autism. Today, on the right, you can see that it has increased year by year, steadily upward to in 2020, it was 1 in 36. In 22, which was the latest data that I can find, it was 1 in 31 children. And I suspect that many people listening to us this evening know someone either in their own family or in a friend's family whose child or children exhibit some symptoms of conditions that are exhibited on the what's called the autism spectrum. Things like ADD, ADHD, or full-blown autism itself, which is can be a very devastating condition. This is not simply that we're noticing it more. And to suggest that, as RFK said, is nonsense. There is an additional, bear with me for a moment here, there's an additional video that talks about the incidence of and the importance of recognizing this in applications of the hepatitis B vaccine, because that happens to be one of the ones that is given to very young children, babies in many cases, and can be one of the first vaccines given to them. And parents need to understand this and be able to make logical, wise, informed choices. Let's go ahead and take a look at this conversation with Tucker.
if you wanted to find the answer, which is to compare outcomes in a fully vaccinated group to health outcomes in an unvaccinated group. And CDC did that study in 1999. They brought in a team of scientists under a Belgian researcher named Thomas Verstraeten, and they looked at the data. They looked at children who had received the hepatitis vaccine within the first 30 days of life, and compared those children to children who had received the vaccine later or not at all. And they found an 135% elevated risk of autism among the vaccinated children. And it shocked them. They kept the study secret, and then they manipulated it through 5 different iterations to try to bury the link. And, we know how they did it. They got rid of all the older children, essentially, and just had younger children who were too young to be diagnosed. And they stratified the data, and they did a lot of other tricks. And all of those studies were the subject of that kind of trickery.
Okay, so again, we need folks to be aware of these things so that they can make wise, informed choices. And these are not just podcasters. They're not folks that do not know this industry. This was RFK reporting that the CDC knew of such things and has kept that knowledge from the public. That means that parents that might have made other choices were not allowed to have the information necessary to make those choices. We think that that is indeed something that I call a crime.
No, it's mass murder. I mean, it's mass, inflicting harm.
And as broad as we can get that knowledge, just like the mRNA coverage that we did earlier this week, that thankfully now has been acted on with these 22 projects. Folks need to understand what these things can do, and hopefully we can see change in that chart that we just showed, that showed this massive increase in conditions along the autism spectrum. We've got two more subjects to cover, both of which are troubling, and both of which I think you may have specific feelings about, because they may represent things that you and others that have served have experienced. And so we'll go on to those. If we want to take another break, this would be a really good time.
Let me talk about a couple things. One, we all have heard us talk about the wellness company often. I'm just going to bring this up. And if you go to twc.health/CDM, this is the page that comes up. And if you click on Wellness Farms, if you remember, we were having advertising the Family Farm beef box a while back, and his business changed and he stopped advertising. But the wellness company now has a similar product that we're going to be talking about a lot. I have an interview with Chef Gruel from the wellness company, the chief nutrition officer, which will run soon. But if you go there, you can see the Wellness Farms beef boxes. So again, comes from local farms. The supply chain is no mRNA, no antibiotics, grass-fed. So we are very excited about this. It's a new product, but the wellness company has revolutionized healthcare, and they're looking to revolutionize protein, and they're going to be adding chicken and pork and all down the road. But check it out. Spend some time. Go to twc.health/CDM and look at that. And just don't forget the C/CDM, twc.health/CDM. If you're looking for a great read for the winter, the summer, the beach, the trip, get my first novel, Currency. It's at historyofbooks.com or anywhere books are sold. Great knowledge of history and of finance, and it's a page turner. Get a lot of good comments. Has about 500 reviews with close to 5 stars on Amazon. Back to you, Bill.
And especially with all the discussion that's going on regarding Jerome Powell and the Fed and the questions surrounding that, I think that would be a wonderful read. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a page turner. In fact, I'll just show people real quick here. This is the comment that I get a lot, that feeling of just not wanting to stop reading. That 2 a.m., okay, I'll do one more page, and it should be a movie. So, and there's work on that. I actually was in Nevis doing a book signing which is down in the Caribbean at an old sugar plantation up on the hill, historical place, and I did a book signing in the library while I was there, and I left a copy of the book. This was years ago, and I got a call from the British Film Academy in London and said, we read your book because we saw it in the library, and we want to talk about doing some kind of series. So that may happen eventually, but anyway, it's a great book, and you can find it anywhere. Currency by L. Todd Wood. Back to you.
Okay. All right. Again, we began the show with this notion that people, especially politicians, and maybe those that are adjunct to politicians, are actors in some way. Well, Tulsi Gabbard has brought out a very now concerning set of information regarding James Clapper. You'll recall that following 9/11, one of the ways that the decision was made to get involved in Iraq was the notion that weapons of mass destruction existed in Iraq, and it was then incumbent upon the U.S. to step in and deal with this prior to them theoretically being used on Americans in some form or fashion. Now comes word from Tulsi Gabbard that, in fact, the Russiagate hoax, within which Clapper participated with others, and led by what we are told now was Obama himself. Clapper was also involved in creating information that suggested that these weapons of mass destruction existed. Whoop, I got the wrong page there. I'm going to take that down. these weapons of mass destruction existed when in fact they did not. Let me get the right one here for you. There we go. And so what does that mean? Did we go to war over false information? And how in the heck did this get driven by James Clapper and potentially others? Let's listen to Tulsi Gabbard here.
Was on the team that created, that manufactured intelligence assessment that led to the Iraq war, about the Iraq WMDs. He writes about it in his book, saying that he and his team of intelligence analysts created something that was not there. When you look at his actions then, and you look at his actions in 2016 as Obama's director of national intelligence, you see someone who has no problem whatsoever politicizing and manufacturing and weaponizing intelligence for a political outcome.
So all I can think when I hear that, Todd, is how many times have we been lied to? How many conflicts, specifically in this case and others, have we gotten involved with? How many people have been sent to fight when the facts and I have been sent to fight and give their lives for things that didn't exist the way that we have been told?
Oh, it's disgusting, and it's happening still today, Bill. I mean, we can't trust what we're being told. I mean, dude, that has to be solved. It's just not acceptable.
Now, this next one is going to put a craw in many people's thinking. It's going to be a difficult one, but I believe, based on a trip that you did going back a little over a year ago, that you can speak to this as well. General Flynn on Steve Bannon's show today came out and talked about the fact that there were inconsistencies with the original story, talked about in terms of the attack, if you will, on Israel coming from Gaza. Mm-hmm. And rather than put my words around it, let's hear directly from General Flynn.
Machinations, and there's got to be some big problems right now internal, and Netanyahu's dealing with it with the IDF. They're going to have to do some soul searching, and I mean immediate soul searching, because the 7th of October was a date, that they still have not been able to, and there's an investigation going on, and I've already heard from some of the soldiers that were told to stand down and the exact hours. So something bad happened, and it was an inside thing. I don't know, again, that's a bombshell right there. So the internal situation in Israel has got to be done with a
hold it, hang on, whoa, hang on, you can't drop a bomb like that. Mike Flynn, your former head of DIA, first national security advisor, President Trump, a revered figure globally. You're saying your sources are telling you on the investigation that they're trying to slow down and slow walk over there because we're coming up on the 2nd anniversary of it. You're saying that you're hearing there's testimony or documents or actual evidence that certain elements of the Israeli military were told to stand down? Because I know from people I know, this is a very contentious area and it's going to be explosive. Are you hearing the same thing?
Steve, you can go back to interviews that I did like the next day and the following week after October 7th in multiple broad alternative media, where I said something went wrong. Because, Steve, I have personally walked that border. I have been down at those areas, and I know the details of how the Israelis, one of the most secure borders in the world, how they do their operations. So I know that. So something broke down, and it wasn't because of mistakes. So that's number one. This internal machinations that are going on right now, what's going to have to happen? They're going to have to come to grips with this, because I'm going to tell you, the American people, they're getting tired of it. They're getting tired of this constant, Israel. I mean, I'm the biggest fan. I would, I have been to Israel many times. I have, served alongside them. I have done things with them, certainly on the intelligence side. So I'm their biggest fan. But the American people are not. And the American people are so tired of all of the craziness and our involvement in these things
Okay. So I'm going to turn this over to you at this point, because you were there within the days following this. Yes, Todd, right?
Yeah, I was. And, it's interesting because, again, CDM is way ahead. I'm going to show you what we reported last week. This is, let me see if I got the right one. This is testimony recently in the Knesset, which is the Israeli legislature, that says, well, I'll just let you listen. Well, you can't, it's in Hebrew, but there are subtitles.
6:30 בבוקר, 7 באוקטובר, אתה במוצב. אצלנו ה-7 באוקטובר מתחיל לפני 6:30. אני הייתי לוחם במחלקת מרגמות בגדוד 13, גולני, ובאותו לילה אני, יותם סרור, הסמל שלי תמר בן יהודה, זיכרונו לברכה, שלושתנו עושים לילה לבן. הרשינו לעצמנו בשבתות וחגים במיוחד, לעשות לילה לבן עד לכוננות עם שחר, ואתם יודעים, יש לנו זמן לישון מחלקת מרגמות, עד לכוננות הבאה. אז ב-5:20 בבוקר, אנחנו יושבים ליד הקשר כדי לא להעיר מאזין, והסמג"ד שלי, ניר בוינפלק, שגם הוא נפצע קשה, וברוך השם הוא שרד, פתאום עולה בקשר בהודעה מוזרה. כל התחנות, לא יודע למה, לא יודע איך, משהו בסגנון הזה, אין סיור בגדר עד 9 בבוקר. באיזה שעה זה? 5:20 בבוקר.
כל תחנות נשארים כאן משנה, אז מבחינת קרקע ואויב אין לנו דברים משמעותיים. מבחינת כוחותינו יצאה הנחיה מהחטיבה שעד השעה 9 בבוקר מול הערכת המצב, אף כלי לא מגיע לבורמה. ואני חוזר שוב, עד 9 בבוקר ואל מול הערכת המצב, אף כלי לא לבורמה. נמצאים בנקודות זינוק אחוריות, הנחיית חטיבה, לא יודע בדיוק למה, לא שואל יותר מדי, זאת ההנחיה, זה מה שאנחנו עושים.
קצת לפני שהכל מתחיל. ואיתמר דופק לנו פרצוף כזה של מה? ואתה יודע, אנחנו חיילים פשוטים סך הכל, לוחמים, לא מפקדים ולא קצינים שנוכל לשאול שאלות, זו הוראה של הסמג"ד, מקבלים את הפקודה הזאת ולא שואלים שאלות, הורדת פקודה רגילה. ובאמת אחרי שעה, 6:30, פתאום אזעקות.
תראי, אני אגיד לך את האמת, אני חייתי עם זה מה-7 באוקטובר ומאוד חששתי לדבר.
Whoops. It looks like we may have lost Todd. I hope he will rejoin. The question you need to be asking yourself after watching this is, how many times have we been led to believe something that was in fact not true? How many times have young Americans been sent to fight and potentially give their lives in a case where they were not acting on the right facts? Go ahead, Todd. I was just saying we had to.
I hit the wrong button to
No
close that
worries.
out, but that is on our Israeli site, Zionism.com. Look, I have been to Israel, as you said, many times. I have lots of friends in Israel. We have business partners in Israel, and I'm not accusing the Israeli people, and I'm not accusing anybody. I'm saying this needs to be investigated because we've said from the beginning this was very strange. I agree with General Flynn. It needs to be looked at. There is something in the Likud government or in the apparatus there that is concerning, and I'll leave it at that. It needs to be investigated. I mean, nobody can dispute that. Back to you.
Agreed. I think the key with all of these is we're learning a harsh lesson that we cannot just simply take information at face value. We need to see the facts behind it. I recall when you had traveled to Israel, one of the things that was notable, there were reports already showing that the border seemed to be nearly deserted at the area where the incursion occurred. Nobody could explain why, and especially given the fact that that's one of the most highly guarded areas in the world. You can't get a kitty cat across that border without somebody's alarm going off on a desk somewhere in some operations center. So, to your point, investigation is the next step. We won't point fingers at anyone, but for our listeners, these are one of the things that exhibit that we have to ask questions, and we have to press for answers to those questions.
And we would not be doing our job, Bill, as journalists and as a media outlet if we didn't. The problem we have in this society is there is no media accountability and no sunshine on what is happening. So it happens again and again and again because there's no accountability.
And that's true. That's true with just about everything we've spoken of today. There's no accountability when politicians make recommendations, and then those recommendations seem to be just foolish to the point of absurd about folks that we should count on and allow to lead us, whether it be the Georgia GOP, whether it be, financial decisions, whether it be previous wars, maybe with current military actions currently in discussion. We have to ask the hard questions and ask for the data that backs these things up, and not allow ourselves to be fooled into assuming that, well, just because the media says it's the fact. We've already shown that to be not true.
And it's not just the Israeli apparatus, national security, it's the American national security. You can't tell me that the intelligence apparatus we have did not detect something there. I simply don't believe that. So again, and I'm not sure, well, I know that I don't count on the Netanyahu government actually doing an investigation. So Israel has to deal with this in some fashion.
That's right. In these past weeks, I think we've both discussed that there seem to be more things coming out in more areas. Health, the Obama administration, Russiagate, the elections, and other things. And it seems to be coming out in all those areas almost simultaneously, but from different people and from different vectors of communication.
Yeah.
I think one of our jobs as we go forward is going to be to try to get our handle around as many of those as we can and help people understand what the facts actually suggest. And so, to your point, that I think has been, and especially now is our job. And boy, we're here to do it.
Yes, and I just got word I'm going to be on War Room tomorrow morning talking about the Christian persecution in Armenia. We'll have to stress out our production capability and try to simulcast while I'm on the skiff and go on the War Room at the same time. We'll see, but we'll try to make that happen. So look forward to that.
There we go. How wonderful. All right. Anything else before we close for this evening, Todd?
No, just check us tomorrow, 10 to noon, Monday through Friday Eastern on the skiff. And the Georgia show will be back Sunday at 2. The Colorado show, some of the players have court commitments and other things. These people are very, Ash Epp and others out there are involved in a lot of election fraud litigation, believe it or not. And so we didn't have a show today, but they'll be back next week. And I would ask the audience to put us in your scan. I mean, just check out cdm.press several times a day and subscribe to our social media, subscribe to our Rumble channel, CDM1, YouTube. We're back on YouTube, got a few hundred subscribers. We lost tens of thousands a few years ago, but anyway, we're back. So just support us as much as you can. Thank you, Bill.
That's great. We'll see you next time. Next show will be Wednesday evening at 7. I'm sorry, Sunday afternoon at 2. We're on Wednesday evening at 7.
Yeah.
And then tomorrow evening, we're going to have on one of our adjunct channels, Insist on Truth, we'll be airing an interview with Sheila Holm, who weighs in on a number of things, including some odd information and data regarding Ukraine. And we found that to be a mystery kind of place, and she has some very interesting thoughts regarding it. So that'll be on at 7 p.m. tomorrow evening, and on our regular channels, Insist on Truth, CDM, and John B. Wells Live. So look forward to that.
Excellent.
We'll see you next time. Thanks.